Rethinking Heroes, Life After the Military.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth, all while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
Uh-oh, with me, Carrie Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes, Life After the Military with Carrie Harrison.
Carrie Harrison here with you, your new best friend. This is Rethinking Heroes, a program dedicated to veterans, to really all of us who are veterans of one thing or another, but some people have gone before us, and we have cures, we have solutions, we have ways of improving their life, upgrading their life hacks into, let's just say, comfort and pleasure. Right now, I want to jump into some of our cool guests. We have an Army PSYOPS guy with a lot of background on who and why is James Bond what he is, and how many of the real ones do we have in our world. Then we're going to be talking to the CEO of a piece of software that is going to be offering great solutions to those of us suffering, those of us who are living life after the military. Then we're going to go to David Carrion, MD, a board-certified Stanford-trained psychiatrist specializing in treating cases thought by others to be hopeless. The code for that is, yeah, we're talking cure, at least with a lowercase c. We're going to learn what that is more. If you thought depression was going to wipe you out and own you for the rest of your life, it may not, in fact, be the case. And then finally, we're going to talk to Russell Midori, a American photojournalist born in Brooklyn, founder of Military Veterans in Journalism, and find out why only 2% of all journalists are from the military when they have probably the best training for journalism. They show up on time, they get their deadlines in on time, they do the stuff the rest of us, like me, with our feet up going, oh yeah, no, I'll get it done. No, they're like on the money. And we're going to talk about how that organization works. But first, let's welcome our Army PSYOPS guy, a man who has seen it, done it, and I am reliably informed by him that there's so much we cannot talk about because of its classified nature, but I think we could do some broad sweeps here and bring you up to speed. His name is John Curbo, Army PSYOP, that's Psychological Operations. He's a vet with time in Iraq via the Army, Afghanistan via the DoD directly, with an emphasis and understanding on the nuances of culture, people, human behavior, speaks a variety of foreign languages, including Arabic, I mean, who doesn't? Spanish, German, I actually do speak German. It's useless in LA, but it's kind of fun when ordering a piece of bread on Oktoberfest. He speaks Russian and focuses on combating extremism and disinformation, drawing lessons from the war zone. What's not to love about that? And hello, John Curbo. Welcome to Rethinking Heroes.
Hi, Carrie. Good to be here. I really appreciate this.
Glad to have you on board today. And PSYOPS is a term we all know from watching Jack Ryan or, well, anything on TV.
Men who stare at goats.
Yes. So tell us about PSYOPS. What is PSYOPS?
Yeah, so it's very widely misunderstood, but in simple terms, it's understanding a particular audience and having the tools to try to persuade them toward a particular behavior, to do something or not do something. It could be everything from voting during the Iraqi elections or resisting militia recruitment over in Afghanistan or Iraq, or it could be something short-term like cease resistance or stop fighting or something like that, or it could be more advanced like driving a wedge between various tribal factions within an insurgency, or trying to get to a key leader, for better or worse, trying to make friends or drive an enemy against another enemy. So it's a whole spectrum of things, but it basically has the same tools we use to sell cigarettes to people through Edward Bernays' propaganda and Madison Avenue. The show Mad Men was basically about that. It was developed after the War Department in World War II cultivated a more nuanced scientific understanding of human behavior, and marketing and advertising took it to the next level. So did people like Joseph Goebbels, and so did the United States military. We're all using the same toolkit. So it's sort of like the
and by the way, John Curbo, Joseph Goebbels was met by the same Edward L. Bernays who got women to smoke pretty much overnight, making the tobacco companies extremely happy. Right. He, an American, wrote a book called Propaganda, which is the source of this, and then even gave that to the Germans. That's why military history is so interesting for us to be able to figure out how we arrived where we are today. You are then involved in the propaganda arm of the government, of the military anyway then. if we want to call it that. Maybe we don't
Right.
want to. Maybe I want to call it that.
Well,
Maybe you
sure.
don't want to call it that.
I like to use the Hogwarts analogy. It's like magic in Hogwarts is not good or bad. It's used by people for different ends. The Force in Star Wars is not good or bad. You have Siths and you have Jedi. Unfortunately, there's way too many Siths, whether it's a troll from their mom's basement trying to radicalize people online through extremist incel communities or Boogaloo or what have you. And there's extremism across the political spectrum, to be clear. Or it could be the propaganda coming out of the Kremlin, and they've been doing this for 100 years since Lenin. They're the best at it in the world in some ways. So it's about how you use an understanding of human behavior. And propaganda just means you're propagating a message. But a clear distinction is, as per the Constitution, as it should be, we don't psyop or target American people or NATO audiences. And I'm not saying it does or doesn't ever happen. I'm saying Army military psyop. We are not allowed to target the American people or NATO audiences, and it should be that way. Whereas in Russia, they go to town. Basically, if you look at PSYOP training, it's like the Hogwarts School of Magic. We learn to understand human behavior, the tools to select an audience, analyze them, use the right means of dissemination through the media, and nudge them. Those are the tools we learn, but those same tools can be used to understand how Americans are radicalized right here on our home front, how so many people are influenced why January 6th happened, why so many people believe false conspiracies, and how the brain is amenable to these beliefs, and how the brain is an easy target. You could have AR-15s stacked up in your man cave in a bunker from here to all the way across the, you could have all the military style body armor and guns in the world, but if your brain is an easy target, you're a target. And that's what we want to do, is educate Americans.
We're talking right now to John Curbo here on Rethinking Heroes. You can learn more about him and everything we do here on the show, Rethinking Heroes, by going to rethinkingheroes.com, where at the end of every month, this program will relieve $1 million in medical debt for regular people across the United States in the name of military veterans. It's never been done because veterans have never been given a chance to show up and show they're still in the fight. Well, many are suffering. Many are finding ways to channel that to help other people, regular people, civilians. The people for whom they are giving their lives is the civilian population, which might be you, the listener, as well as you, also a veteran yourself. We're talking to John Curbo, Army PSYOP vet. So he's explaining to us what PSYOPs or psychological operations are and why they're effective and necessary in the military. And John, can you share, without truly violating a classified situation, I'm sure all of yours are in one way or the other, but can you share a story where one of these PSYOP operations you were in was successful?
Sure. Well, a more famous one, and I wasn't there, this is before my time, but I believe it was Army Rangers, when they were taking the runway to go after Manuel Noriega, they played Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses over the loudspeaker. Is a kind of demoralization tactic. Of course, hearing that music wouldn't demoralize me by any means, but the point is, a common example is trying to get people to stop fighting before shots are even fired. So if you're outside a village, you have troops or you have military operations ready to clear buildings or take the village, you can have a loudspeaker, you can understand the audience, you can give them a reason to stop fighting before fighting is even necessary. An example that comes to mind that might be that hits home for me, and this was actually when I was not with PSYOP, I was with the human terrain system in Afghanistan, but it was the same idea. We had rock throwing in the village from kids and people in the village toward the soldiers, and it was getting so bad that they thought the infantry was going to have to come in and start clearing houses. So they talked to us and said, hey, can your human terrain team go sit down with the tribal elders, sit down with the people in the village, work with the culture, kind of have a small version of a jirga, and talk to the leaders in that village and understand the source of the conflict and how to diffuse it in a way that culturally resonates with the people on the ground in this part of Afghanistan. This is in Nangarhar province, near the northern eastern part. And so I was dressed in the local attire, we had security and everything like that, and we sat down. And in a sense, the whole idea is not just to dress up and go full Kevin Costner. The idea is, sometimes you're wearing your military or your civilian attire, sometimes the Afghan attire. The idea is, what is going to effectively persuade them toward a behavior change that will make everybody safer? And I've been trying to promote the same idea when it comes to policing within American communities. Anything that makes everybody safer through an understanding of what's going on the ground and the people within a community or a neighborhood, everybody wins.
Amen to that. And that's, I think, another topic for another show at another time, is taking military guys and throwing them into the police force without fully explaining this is not the same thing. This is
Right.
Timmy stealing a candy bar, and the reaction has to be different. And it's nobody's fault if they're not retrained. And I think that's part of our responsibility. I want to thank you so much, John Curbo, Army PSYOP vet with time in Iraq, via the Army in Afghanistan, via the DoD, emphasis on understanding nuances of culture and people over the years, focused on how veterans with special operations and civil affairs backgrounds can find meaningful pathways to continue to serve here at home, adapting their skills to address some of our most pressing social issues, including how we respond to hate, radicalization, echo chambers.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
I want to introduce to you another hero that we're rethinking. His name is Rick Johnson. He is the CEO of VOI. Rick identifies and connects with organizations that are working to provide mental health care services to patients, to employees, to veterans, and service members, active ones. As a U.S. Marine Corps leader for 30 years, well, let me tell you, he has seen some serious battle. He has seen firsthand the devastating impact untreated mental health issues has on individuals and their loved ones. I think we can all relate to that just after having been through the pandemic. We all can relate to what they go through. Now multiply it by 1,000 because they've actually been involved, seen it, and done it. Rick is confident that with sufficient focus, detection, and effective treatment on mental health issues, they can be dramatically improved. I want to welcome you, Rick Johnson. Welcome you very much to Rethinking Heroes, and glad you're here today.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you for having me.
Hey, if you wouldn't mind kicking on your camera, I'd be very grateful, since we do video stream this show, and you'll be able to see a copy of it, of course, on RethinkingHeroes.com, as well as Substack and every other platform that you enjoy. Rick, glad to have you. Where are you located today?
Well, as you can tell from my flannel shirt, I live in New Hampshire.
Yes, living free, but not dying.
Correct. Yeah, I live in Hanover, New Hampshire, and our company VOI is actually located in Springfield, Vermont, right across the river.
So let's just jump into it. You are saying that you have software or a system that detects and effectively treats mental health issues, which can be dramatically improved. If that doesn't get every human dog tail wagging in the room, I don't know what does.
Correct. Yeah. So what we have done is we've taken a look at the problem of suicide and actually broken it down into two separate areas. How do you effectively identify those people at risk of suicide? And then once you've identified them, how do you provide continuous monitoring and support to keep them safe? So our detection tool is called VOI Detect, and our support tool is called VOI Reach.
So how does this work for the average layman? We're not all coders and gamers. We don't sit in our mom's basement. I would love to. It feels safe and warm down there. But I don't get to do that, and I don't get to live in the world of understanding this technology. So run this through me so I get it.
Yeah, so VOI Detect is an algorithm. It replicates the expert judgment of a psychiatrist. It takes about 2 minutes to complete. It's an 11-item assessment. The patient or the military personnel or a prisoner can actually complete the assessment using an iPad or smartphone. Once the assessment is complete, the algorithm scores them on a low, medium, or high risk. So it'll tell you what your risk is in the next 72 hours. And then once you've determined the risk, then whatever the protocol is for that risk level, that's then implemented. We are currently being used in prison systems. The military's used our tools. We're getting ready to join an addiction recovery center. And we're also getting ready to kick off a large contract with the National Guard. On the support side, VOI Reach, basically the individual downloads our app onto their smartphone. They're connected with a live coach. That coach will then ask them who in their life is going to keep them safe and get them healthy. The person will identify 3 to 5 individuals. Those people are asked to join. Once the whole team is on the app, the coach can work with the whole team to provide guidance. So most loved ones want to help someone with a mental health issue. They just don't know what to say or what to do. So they typically don't say anything or don't do anything, which just exacerbates the feeling of isolation. So the coach can say, here's 3 things you can say to your loved one suffering from severe depression or substance use. Here's 3 things you shouldn't say. And then VOI Reach also allows the coach to do remote assessments, can provide educational modules to the whole team on whatever the issue they're dealing with. And then our AI engine is constantly scanning for changes in risk. So the coach is notified if a risk category is changed, so they can reach out immediately, talk to the patient, find out what's going on. If the patient's not engaging, they can talk to the support network to find out what's going on. And then in a worst case scenario, can direct them to the hospital. And if no one's responding, can actually use the GPS data from the phone to call a local 911 to do an active rescue.
This is outstanding. And one of the things I love about military technology is when it becomes remainder military technology and then available to the general public. So everyone listening can know that this kind of thing is going to be available sometime soon for them, if not already in some instances. AI has become very popular in just the last week. Now, let's face it, it's not that we all didn't know about it, but we didn't have Chat GPT from Alphabet. We didn't have Elon Musk's fingers in the pie. We didn't have Google jumping in all at the same time. And of course, everyone is terrified remembering original Star Trek episodes, Captain Dunsel and the great takeover of AI. But AI is only basically responds to the guy who wrote the program, and your program is to help people. And so it learns what, oh, this is what clinical depression looks like versus maybe situational depression. So it can then even have a more expansive understanding and capability in solving these solutions. And, you know, you've got the military involved, Rick Johnson, now saying this actually works, and so we're committing to it. This is a giant tsunami in the wave of cure, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we're very excited. Our goal has always been to get our tools into as many hands as possible. We had a very successful pilot with the U.S. Air Force actually during COVID. And because of that success, we are now getting ready to be used in several National Guard units in 3 states. And as you mentioned, you know, AI, you always hear the dystopian effects of it, but, you know, we're using AI for a positive impact. And I didn't mention in our void detect solution, the identification, if we're actually connected to a database such as a health record, de-identified data can be actually fed back into our algorithm, and over time it will learn and eventually be able to outpredict a psychiatrist with regards to imminent suicide risk.
Wow, this is amazing. I do want to thank you for coming on today. We can learn more about you, not only at your website, but at rethinkingheroes.com. But go ahead and give your website for people a little itchier than to do what I say.
Sure. So people can look at our solutions and ask, you know, for any information. Our website is www.voi.health, HEALTH.
All right. I do thank you, Rick Johnson. Rick Johnson is CEO of VOI or VOI. He identifies and connects with organizations working to provide mental health care services to patients, employees, veterans, and service members. Who is he? Well, he recently served as a Vermont Assistant Attorney General, taught strategy and planning at the U.S. Naval War College, worked as Associate Director of the Dartmouth Institute, which is a health policy think tank, and created and helped lead Dartmouth Hitchcock Health Systems Innovation Center. Holds a J.D. from Vermont Law School, a MALD or a MALD in International Relations from Tufts, an MA in strategy from the U.S. Naval War College, and a BS in oceanography from the U.S. Naval Academy. So, well, Rick, I'm glad we did not talk to a layabout today, and I do look forward to having you back on down the road.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, everyone.
All right, my friend, this is Rethinking Heroes. More in a sec.
Rethinking Heroes, Life After the Military with Kerry Harrison.
Kerry Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes. You can always learn more at rethinkingheroes.com. Very simple place. It'll have all the information you need to know about the interesting people that we're interviewing and the cures and the fixes and the solutions and the bravery and how they put their neck out on behalf of the other humans on Earth. A lot of people don't. They might just sell widgets or, you know, feel good things. These people are really doing the heavy lifting, and that's why they deserve to have their voices heard, particularly when it comes to veterans or the service community. How many tens of millions of people were in the service, and you don't even know about it. Sure, if they're over a certain age, they were drafted, so you know they were in it. Then there's other people who just went and volunteered. You know, going back since the dawn of this country. My family, the founding fathers, came over in the Mayflower. Two of my ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence. And while I was not personally ever drafted, you know, I've been interstitially involved. All my friends are very cool military people. So I have a real passion to help pay back the people who have paid so much, so dearly, that I could be on the radio today with freedom of speech. Let me introduce to you a cool cat. This guy is a superhero. His name is David Carrion. He's a doctor, board-certified, Stanford-trained psychiatrist specializing in treating cases thought by others to be simply and purely hopeless. He was on the pioneering research team that developed SAINT, or SNT, a revolutionary treatment for depression that resulted in up to a 90% remission. 90%! I say that because if you're depressed, a 90% remission, unheard of. 90% remission rates after a, ready for this one? 1 week treatment. He co-founded and leads Acacia Mental Health, the largest clinic in the country offering these new types of treatments. He trained at Stanford for both medical school and residency, also on the faculty of Stanford, working in the emergency room with those in suicidal crisis. His published research has included developing new ways to measure willpower and spirituality, explorations in philosophy of mind, and contrarian findings in basic neuroscience. And boy, do we know that neuroscience is real. His more recent emphasis has been on applied neuromodulation. What does that mean? Well, let's find out right now. Let's say hello to David Carrion, and welcome so much to Rethinking Heroes.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is it's just such an exciting time to be doing this work in such an important moment.
Well, 90% remission rates, I mean, I'm horripilating in anticipatory delight. I'm vibrating out of my brain because the closest thing I've ever known to that, David Carrion, is taking 40 Lexapro and hiding in a closet. We're not talking about that, are we?
No, this is a true breakthrough in treatment of depression and a lot of other things too. By bringing together the best of the last decades of neuroscience, both from how to image, how to take the pictures, how to personalize it, as well as how to optimize the parameters. You bring that together and you're able to get results that nobody's ever seen before. So the results published in that first paper by Nolan Williams at Stanford were that 90% number are just absurd. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. The best results in treating treatment-resistant depression ever, to my knowledge. And that's continuing to be real, that most people getting better and having a breakthrough in depression that even 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 medications haven't worked on. So it's a really exciting time.
Maybe you could walk us through, because a lot of us are knuckle walking hispidulous, like me, just Neanderthal neophytes. And while all this sounds delightfully sexy, and it really does, help me understand. So I come in, you're in here in California, come into your clinic, or I could come from Iowa or Maine, it doesn't really matter, Switzerland, why not? I come into your clinic. How does this work in a nutshell?
So in a nutshell, as you said, you can come from anywhere. Unlike a lot of other types of treatments, you really can fly in. So we've got a lot of our patients coming from all over the place. It's a 5-day treatment. So you come into the office. By the time you've come into our office, we've already taken a picture of your brain, an fMRI.
Well, in the office, I hope, because we're paranoid.
So you've already have that brain picture at a imaging center. We've processed it. We've picked out the best personalized targets for you, and that's and then we place a magnet over the spot that's going to give you the best results. And so we do that using some fancy camera equipment, matches your MRI to the real live room, and then are able to deliver that stimulation. Feels like somebody's knocking or tapping on your head. It's unpleasant, but not usually too painful. You do that for 10 minutes every hour for 10 hours a day for 5 days, and you've gotten a huge push in the direction against depression. But so too, anxiety and, depression is a broad, difficult to define thing. So we've seen improvements in a variety of spectrum, a variety of symptoms from anxiety to sort of trauma responses to a number of other things too. But 5 days and things get better usually day by day.
That's incredible. We're talking right now to Dr. David Carrion, board-certified Stanford-trained psychiatrist specializing in treating cases thought by others to be hopeless. He's with Acacia, which is here in California, and they do exactly this. And within a week, you become essentially a changed person. Before, we all had to drop a bunch of pills, hope for the best. Wait a month, by the way, for them to kick in. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And then they wear off between 6 and 9 months, but you're not sure. And it's an endless cycle. And I think the brain, and here I am as I'm going to speculate, but the brain is kind of sort of like a bag of jelly with electric current going through it. And you get a little neurological or neurochemical dysregulation. Maybe let's call it that. Sometimes the stuff that's going through it isn't right. And what you do is sort of motivate it into being optimized where it should have been all along.
Yeah, and so the service that we offer, the treatment we call HOPE TMS, which stands for holistic, optimized, personalized, and expedited. And so we do really believe that these non-biological treatments are an important aspect, that psychotherapy, and particularly team CBT, is the type of therapy we practice. I'm trying to combine this with the best of traditional modes and unlocking people's ability to engage in therapy. Sort of like doing physical therapy doesn't work so well if you've got a broken bone, but once you fix the bone, you can actually do the physical therapy. We optimize it based on the neuroscience parameters. We personalize it to the individual, and then we expedite it, the 5 days, but then also try to get people in quickly. We don't want you to be on, a wait list for 9 months before getting help. And so this really does open up a lot of possibilities for people we could help. And I think that this is one of the things that's been satisfying also, is to see these see people not just who haven't had hope for a long time, but people who are in crisis. This also can help with.
I am a particular fan also, Dr. David Carrion, of the fact that you actually address spirituality and the other components of the human condition. If we pretended that didn't exist, for whatever people think of Freud, which may not have been his thing, but then his offshoot was, of course, involved with Bill W. of AA, and they realized that the spiritual condition was part of the problem for many, especially when it comes to condition. And so it looks like when you're holistic, you're not just going in and throwing Band-Aids on a wound. The wound may be invisible. And so you have to go find that as well.
No, and I think that's one of the things that we've been focused on, trying to deliver these treatments to as many people as we can, but recognizing that once you've treated somebody, and maybe they've been depressed for decades, being undepressed isn't the same thing as flourishing. And so sort of our another phase and focus that we are moving into is thinking, okay, what do we do now? Now that you don't have any good habits, you don't have any solid relationships, you might not have a job that's satisfying, or even a job at all, because you've been so depressed. Like, okay, the biological piece is fixed, but we don't want you to fall back into it. We want to get you to a place where you're flourishing. And so that's been a personal interest of mine also. Before Acacia, I did research showing that with a group that showed that when you had high levels of daily spiritual experiences, you were able to almost completely mitigate the effect of stress. Something bad happens, but you're high on daily spiritual experiences. It doesn't make you more depressed. which is an astonishing ability to buffer the bad things. But even more astonishing, when stressful things happen and you're at a high level of daily spiritual experiences, it increases your degree of flourishing, which is, again, absolutely astonishing, to your point, that groups like AA and others are able to integrate and almost transcend some of these challenges. But yeah, getting that right and figuring that out is something that is on our future, I hope, both as a clinic but also as a society.
What I think is particularly cool as we wrap up this conversation is there is a billion-dollar industry in people selling how-tos and DVDs and all of that. And what you do in one fell swoop, I was going to say swell foop, but I will do swell foop. Oh yeah, in a week, you literally change somebody, and they can walk out of there a different human. And then you also give them the tools of how to stay a fixed person on all levels. And that's really new science, because you're using new science and neuroplasticity. Nobody can argue with how real that is. You train that it's Pavlovian in many ways. I mean, just in the most basic sense, but you're also using brain scans. You're actually looking to locate and find the source of the issue and then fix it right then and there. So this is radical stuff in 2023, 2024. I think a lot of people are going to go through, and veterans and service members that have chronic and seemingly irreversible PTSD, this might be the answer for them.
And I think it's a great point that there's and there are some of these, the 90% number is astonishing. When you think about who's going to stay better, that's another challenge. There are some people where it is one and done, but for others it is the retreatments are sometimes necessary. And this is kind of where this holistic piece comes in. If we get people to a more broad degree of flourishing, then it's going to stick better. But then there's also other comorbidities that we might help with the depression, but still there's PTSD. And so we're doing some, there are other targets and other circuits that we've been trying to locate that would help people with PTSD get better, or people with anxiety, or people with tinnitus. So there's a lot of conditions that have some pretty good evidence with TMS that we're trying to use the same approach and help not just the one condition, but the variety of conditions that go along with it, and not just in the short term where we can make that big push, but figure out ways to keep it in remission and not just bring it into remission. So it's early days, but I think this is the beginning of a new era in psychiatry and neurology.
I have tinnitus ringing in the ears. Another conversation for another time. I'm sure a lot of other people do. They don't love it. So just the idea of that, whoo, boy, you're pinging my radar, my friend. I am so glad that you at Acacia Mental Health are doing this right in California, and that you allow people from all over the world to come and experience this radical change where in 1 week's time, everything can change. Everything you knew that you thought was hopeless can become hopeful. We've been talking to David Carrion, board certified Stanford trained psychiatrist specializing in treating cases thought by others to be hopeless, has a 1 week treatment that results in about a 90% remission. You can learn more, a ton more about him, simply by going to rethinkingheroes.com, rethinkingheroes.com. And the goal and point of these programs is to bring you the stuff you would not ordinarily otherwise get to know about, and the superstars that are putting their neck on the line to make this stuff possible, to make the human race healthier and more whole. And of course, it starts with those of us who are in the worst amount of hurt to begin with. I want to thank you so much, David Carrion, Dr. David Carrion, for joining us today on Rethinking Heroes.
Thank you very much for having me.
We are in complete control. We are Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison, rethinkingheroes.com.
This is Rethinking Heroes. You can learn more at rethinkingheroes.com. You're also going to get to see an entire panoply, the pantheon of parturient I can't triply alliterate as much as I might wish to and try to right now. But let's just say all the cool cats that we've had on here today, you're going to learn everything you want about them and more by going to rethinkingheroes.com. Let's go to our final hero of the day. This is Russell Midori, military veterans in journalism. You will have heard at the top of the hour, we had some military veterans. And we're tightening that up, but it was the first time off the high dive. But the idea here in Rethinking Heroes is to give veterans, no matter where they're from, Marines, Air Force, it doesn't matter. Give them a chance, open that door, open that gate, and let them be the self-supporting people that they really want to be. Russell Midori is a Hispanic-American photojournalist born in Brooklyn, New York, founder of Military Veterans in Journalism, a nonprofit community of 700 members that advocate for diversifying newsrooms through veteran inclusion. Also a photographer and editor at WPIX, and a lecturer on visual storytelling at City College of New York. Graduate student at John Jay College, set to receive a Master of Arts degree in criminal justice this May, a field of study he grew interested in through his work in journalism. He's produced multimedia documentaries in many parts of the world, written a resource guide for scholarship recipients from the Overseas Press Club Foundation, where he serves on the board of governors. And if that isn't just a cool enough CV, I don't know what is. I want to welcome you, Russell Midori, to Rethinking Heroes.
Harry, it is such an honor to be here. Thank you very much for having military veterans in journalism start off the hour, and thanks for giving voices, allowing veterans to put their voice on your air.
Let me also say that we stream as video, though on the radio side you cannot hear this right now. But if you go to rethinkingheroes.com, by tomorrow you'll be able to see the video, and you will find strikingly attractive the guests. That's part of course, the invitation. I'm kidding, but they just happen to be today, so we're going to go with that. So, Russell, you found a way, 700 members of military veterans in journalism. It sounds like newsrooms are not full of military veterans. I'm doing a syllogism there.
It's true. I think that in my career in news, I found oftentimes I've been the only newsroom, the only veteran in a newsroom. And when we started Military Veterans in Journalism, we wanted to reverse that. And of course, we did it because we love veterans and we wanted to help them fully realize their freedom of speech and to have access to careers in the news media, not just careers as garbage men or cops or postal workers, although those are all great jobs, but to be able to actually contribute to the national dialogue. Of course, we started it to help veterans, but as we've grown, we've really seen that in a lot of cases, you could say journalism needs veterans more than veterans need journalism. When you see the rapid decline of trust in the news media and the relative difference of how people continue to trust those who have stuck up their hand and agreed to defend democracy, you can see that veterans bring enormous value to newsrooms because they've earned the trust of the American people.
It's true. And, I would think that out of 10 veterans, and they were said, would you like to do a Kardashian story or something real, like what's in the drinking water that might hurt you? You're not going to get the Kardashian stories. Whereas the rest of us included in the mass media, I don't do Kardashians. I will never. I admit it. Never, never, never. But that's kind of the level they're at. And I'll just tell you quickly, Russell Midori, and you may relate to this. I had lunch with the head of the West Coast Bureau of the Associated Press. The AP gave me an award when I was in Chicago for best commentary in the nation. So I shouldn't say anything bad about them, but we're journalists. So let's just tell it like it is, shall we? I had lunch with this guy and I said, you haven't done a story in 10 years on DU. Now, everyone listening knows what DU is. Some people may not. Depleted uranium. This is the stuff that nuclear power plants, afterward, it's called depleted uranium. They got to get rid of it. They can't. So the stuff famously gets put in, Sears Craftsman tin sheds on stilts outside the nuke plant, or we want to bury it in Nevada. And people say, no, not happening here.
Not in my backyard, they say.
Not in my backyard or at Fukushima. We'll just put it in sheds. Oh, at Tsusami. Oh, there it is going into the water. Yeah, this is the reality of it. And so I asked him, so no stories on it, because our military had famously taken depleted uranium and was coating bombs in it for Gulf War I, because it's a very dense, heavy metal. It cuts through tanks like butter, but it also, when it explodes, it aerosolizes. and you get millions of tiny radioactive gamma particles lodged in your lungs and the alveoli forever. And many of our servicemen were coming back sick. And it's been a problem. Originally, it was thought to be Gulf War syndrome. It's only but one of many. So I think it's a critically important story, critically important. And his response to why haven't you done a story on DU in 10 years is, as he picked up his fork and put another piece of lettuce in his mouth, the West Coast bureau chief of the AP, what's DU? Now, Russell Midori, this guy can summon all of Earth's information to his lunch table at any given time of day. How can you not know? But you know, Russell Midori, and your veterans know stuff. So this is like good for us.
Well, I think that veterans definitely have their finger on the pulse of a lot of different, important things around counterterrorism, and they're certainly more aware of different threats to our national security. But I will say that, I don't want to just stop there. I want to give veterans the power to be able to report on all kinds of things, and that includes the Kardashians. I think it's important that we have more veterans in newsrooms in general.
Well, and that's the plot of the play. I know that there was a big push back in the late 90s for LGBT and everybody else, because how could you possibly have a spectrum of information transmitted if you actually delete a spectrum of information to be transmitted? So the more the merrier, in as much as we all share the same cities, we breathe the same air, and we're, for better or for worse, sharing the same cultures. So we need to know what's going on around us. And the best storytellers, I would ask you, Russell Midori, as we finish this interview, are not military journalists. I mean, they have discipline. They were taught discipline and duty and honor. So are there stories maybe more likely to have a little bit of fact checking and a little bit of truth in them?
Well, I can tell you that, a lot of times if you go to a newsroom where there are a whole bunch of people who don't know the difference between a major and a sergeant major, then if something happens that they need to report on, they'll call up a base and not even fully be aware of who they're talking to. So, of course, there's an enormous amount of institutional knowledge that veterans bring to the table, as well as all kinds of those intangibles that you mentioned, like discipline and comfort with conflict and austere conditions. But really, we look at it kind of as a diversity issue. Not only is it an enormous diverse population of people who have served in the military, but also they bring a diversity of thought. They have different backgrounds and experiences, and they're certainly not a monolith. But veterans bring that diversity of thought with them into newsrooms, and that strengthens news reporting.
All right. Well, I do thank you. And we look forward to more of your good stuff at the top of the hour. And we'll probably do a bottom of the hour, a little news break as well. And I thank you for captaining a nonprofit with 700 as of this minute, probably 714 by the end of this broadcast, veterans in military journalism, or military veterans in journalism, or whatever way I want to say it. I think we all get the plot of the play here. Russell Midori, Hispanic-American photojournalist born in Brooklyn, founder of Military Veterans in Journalism, nonprofit community of 700 plus members advocating for diversifying newsrooms through the veteran inclusion. I do want to thank you for coming on today, my friend.
Thank you, Kerry.
Preventing truth decay. Rethinking Heroes with Kerry Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.